On June 18, 1815, the political structure of the coming century was decided by the maneuvers of three armies on a single Belgian field. Napoleon Bonaparte was a polarizing force. He spent 15 years dismantling feudal traditions and replacing hereditary rule with a centralized, merit-based administration that terrified Europe's monarchs. His strategy to finalize this new order was a tactical race against time. He needed to isolate and break the British army before their Prussian allies could reach the battlefield. But the night before the engagement, a heavy downpour saturated the valley. His grand battery of cannons, the core of his offensive power, could no longer maneuver on the soft ground. Napoleon delayed his attack by several hours, waiting for the midday sun to dry the earth enough to support his artillery. Those hours provided the narrow window the Prussian army needed to arrive. The choice to wait for the mud to dry allowed his enemies to unite, demonstrating how a localized weather event can redirect a continental trajectory. The Prussian arrival turned a stalemate into a rout. Napoleon's veteran guard collapsed under the weight of two converging armies. After his surrender, he was stripped of his titles and confined to St. Helena, a remote volcanic island thousands of miles from the borders of France. He died there 6 years later, ending the French attempt to reorganize Europe under a single imperial banner. This map shows the borders drawn after his defeat. The traditional royal houses resumed their rule, maintaining a fractured system of competing empires that would define the next 100 years. The project of a unified, modern continent ended in the mud of Waterloo, ensuring Europe remained a collection of rival nations rather than a single political entity. If the rain never falls, the ground remains firm. Napoleon launches his massive assault at daybreak and quickly shatters the British center before reinforcements are even in sight. With Wellington forced into surrender, the British government is pulled into a peace treaty, leaving their naval dominance and global colonial network suddenly unsupported. Across the continent, the coalition of monarchs collapses. Napoleon permanently replaces these royal families with a network of satellite states. This is the Code Napoleon. It was designed to unify thousands of local, feudal laws into a single civil system. The code abolished inherited social ranks. The law recognized a person's status regardless of birth, creating legal equality across the French Empire. This diagram shows the resulting economic shift. With every major European city following the same law and currency, every internal trade barrier is removed, creating a unified continental market. This integration would have effectively established a European Union 150 years earlier, potentially accelerating the continent's industrial and economic growth by decades. The effects extend past Europe. A defeated Britain would be unable to sustain the massive naval presence required to maintain its global empire. This would likely result in a significant contraction of colonial expansion across the African continent. In India, the collapse of British state support would have crippled the East India Company's ability to militarize and colonize the region. The primary cause of the major conflicts in the 19th and 20th centuries was the intense competition between rival European empires for resources and territory. This sequence shows how the timeline shifts. Without the friction of multiple competing empires, the specific triggers for World War I are removed. Without a First World War, there is no Treaty of Versailles to impose economic and political ruin on Germany. This removes the conditions of hyperinflation and national desperation that allowed the Nazi Party to seize power in the 1930s. By extension, the path to the Second World War and the systematic atrocities of the Holocaust is closed. Additionally, the absence of a global total war would mean the Manhattan Project is never funded, and atomic weapons are never deployed against Japan. These events were not inevitable. They were the result of a specific geopolitical friction that a Napoleonic victory might have erased, potentially sparing the 100 million lives lost to 20th century warfare. Napoleon was a ruthless autocrat. He seized power in a coup and sustained his empire through nearly constant mobilization and war. But the world that defeated him produced the very horrors he is often blamed for foreshadowing: colonial genocide, global total war, and the nuclear arms race. The side that wins a war gains the authority to define the morality of the conflict. Was Napoleon a villain because of his ambition, Or is he viewed as one because his defeat led to a world we are conditioned to accept as the correct version of history? History is recorded by the victors. This alternate timeline suggests we must account for the specific human cost of the peace that followed Napoleon's downfall.